And now, Pujya Atman Sri Swami Jyotirmayananda commences tonight's Satsang with a Sanskrit peace chant.
Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We begin with mystic song by Sri Swami Lalitananda, played and sung by Sri Swami Umananda and Rajneesh.
Our song tonight is based on a poem by Swamiji. It's called O Krishna. We are recording from the ashram of our revered Guru, Pujya Atman Sri Swami Jyotirmayananda in Miami, Florida. Today is October the 16th, 2018, Tuesday evening, and tonight Swamiji will be lecturing on the Yoga Vasistha. This is series 2018, class number 80. And now, Pujya Atman Sri Swami Jyotirmayananda.
Om Brahmanandam Param Sukhadam Kevalam Jnanam Murtim Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamasyadi Lakshyam Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadhi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Triguna-rahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami. Om. Adorations to Sadguru, who is Brahman, the giver of supreme bliss, embodiment of pure consciousness, one without a second, vast as the ether, infinite, eternal, beyond the three gunas and their modifications, the supreme preceptor. Yoga Vasistha, the Utpatti Prakarana, sections 104 and 105. Sage Vasistha continues, giving profound insight into the goal of life, this attainment of self-realization. There's nothing else to talk about. O Rama, this illusion of the world process exists in the chitta. In order to enlighten you on this point, listen to the story of King Lavana. So interesting story coming, so prepare your ears. And the highlight of this story is the illusion of the world process exists in the chitta. Chitta is called mind stuff. And mind stuff has four aspects. Conscious mind that experiences your practical world, called manas. Next is called buddhi. Buddhi that rationalizes, evaluates. When you experience so many things, all things are not recorded. The buddhi decides what to record, what to let in your unconscious, what not to let in. So if your buddhi is kid buddhi, lets in all type of junk. If buddhi is advanced, shuts out that which is of no use. Next, called ahamkar, ego aspect in your mind that asserts this is me, this is mine. And in the unhealthy state of mind, ego dominates over your intellect. So intellect does not have its own choice. Intellect sees something in a scientific way, this is the right thing. Ego says, don't, change your anger. That's not the right. Because if it is right, what's that to you? What helps you, what makes you comfortable, that's right for you. So ego gives a kind of, say for example, dramatize that. You come into a big hall. You are hearing so many sounds. And you simply don't care. Someone in the corner mentioned your name. Now, ego says to your intellect, go after that person. So ego and intellect relationship has to be well understood. And then the end result of all that you experience through your mind, intellect and ego, recording goes into the unconscious. That unconscious state called chitta. I also understand that in yogic literature, the word chitta can be used simply chitta, it includes all of it. Or it can be described in four aspected way, antaha karana chatushtaya, four aspects of your internal organ. All that you experience is on the basis of this four-aspected mind. And the four-aspected mind have the basic foundation, chitta, which contains all the impressions. and to give you for easy understanding of the story that's coming for you. Think of your iPhone. Your iPhone is with a small I. How many things become important for you because of the iPhone? It can bring so many things from Alaska to New Zealand, from all types of knowledge, astronomy, astrology, and all types of things. It can bring you right in your hand. All that you are seeing into that is a kind of projection. Otherwise, your iPhone is just calm and quiet. Similarly, pure consciousness is your big iPhone, not the small I, big I. I am. That I am awareness brings about, holds all the experiences that you have as a soul moving from life to life. And all about it, every soul from bondage to release, all becomes projections sustained by the big iPhone. So just as you set your small iPhone, not small, I'm talking about because of the small I, and quiet it and go to sleep. You can as well, you can do that only by enlightenment. Switch off all the projections. And that big iPhone, I am, is Satchidananda, absolute bliss and joy. It has all that you brought into it through projections, they were illusions. Maya. That's the theme behind it. And that's the simple but very difficult for human mind to grasp. You can grasp about the world, how things started. You read history, you can grasp it, 1,000 years ago, how people lived. But simple point that all that you are experiencing and reading is based upon your little brain in your skull. And all your experiences are different centers of your brain being touched. Someone is putting fingers, not your fingers. And that's all to it. No matter how real the experience may look like. If this is not easy to understand, just think of your dream. Your dream, while dreaming, is as real as anything else. And in spite of the fact that all that you experience in your dream is so realistic, it has a past, it has present, it has future, and so many things. And yet, not a needle point of the dream world has any reality. You wake up, the entire dream world had no reality. Similarly, all that you experience, go to the hospital, you are rendered for surgery, rendered unconscious, and all the world moves away. You don't have to do that. I have to give you just go to sleep. Deep sleep, all the world goes away. Now, do you have time to understand these? Or should you simply go on wondering, what happened, what is going to happen? So that's what to figure out. Yoga Vasistha gives you deep insight. And for that I need to have some intermission. Now follows the interesting story. There is a country known as Uttar Pandava. This country was very prosperous under the rule of King Lavana. Lavana is an allegorical term for someone looking wonderful, a handsome personality, shining. Lavana is salt. If you have salt within you, you look better. Saltless, but these are the relating to edible salt. It is allegorical. So that was King Lavana. This righteous king was a descendant of the famous king Harishchandra of ancient times. What Vasistha is leading Rama to understand, that Vasistha is telling the story of the solar race in which Rama was born. In other words, he is giving Rama the story about his great grandfather. And Lavana was that type of personality. He was endowed with generosity, humility, heroism, valor, and all the noble qualities that adorn an ideal king. His subjects were happy and contented. Even today, people of that country sing the praises of that great king. Having listened to it, don't go after looking for verifying the story. Because stories are given to give you a teaching, a moral, and that's important. Details are spicy of the story. One day when the king was attending to his daily duties in his royal court, a magician entered and approached the king. First point to understand, the king was very virtuous king, and therefore the whole divine plan behind every individual is to lead the soul to enlightenment. So if you are ready, a channel has to open for the soul to develop this passion towards the world and develop aspiration for God realization. Your virtuous deeds have become really effective if they promote that type of aspiration. But for the masses, virtuous deeds are to secure heavenly status. In heaven, you can have all things that you couldn't get on earth and can go on eating them without being afraid of calories. I'm joking. But when your merit gets exhausted, you will come back. So, if your virtues keep you in that state, that virtue is for kindergarten type, for children. Real virtue, if virtue has become really in a healthy way, it must now open the channel for you to not come back into the world. The virtuous qualities should shock your mind about the illusion of the world. Sarvam dukkam vivekina. The virtuous qualities should lead you to understand that your goal is not to stay in the world of time and space. If you come into the world, you will be facing the same process: childhood, growing up, aging, dying. And that should not be your goal. No matter what may have a wonderful promise or prediction that your next birth you will be the most powerful personality. Everybody will obey your orders. You come into a city, they all will get up. I'm joking, but that's very easy to understand. But when virtuous qualities lead you to a state where you switch your attention from finding your fulfillment in the world of time and space to attaining liberation, that becomes a challenging state. And that's what scriptures give you again and again. And what you read in scriptures, that virtuous people find a time when they go through tremendous suffering. The moral to be received by the masses, that all their virtuous deeds led them to misery. But that misery is not misery. All your good studies leads you to examination, a trial. That's not a misery. Okay, without that now let's go through the story. So that's what now coming. The king was so virtuous. Now he is getting into the trial process. And he is going to go through a big transition. And his transition becomes now, yes, a delicious story for all of you. One day, when the king was attending to his daily duties in his royal court, a magician entered and approached the king. Bowing his head low in respect to the king, the magician said, "O king, allow me to show you the powers of my magic. May you enjoy this while seated on your throne." Thus saying, even without receiving any approval, the magician waved his magic wand of peacock feathers. At this very moment, a beautiful horse was permitted in the royal court as a gift from a neighboring king. The messenger who brought the horse spoke highly of the qualities of the horse and requested the king to ride it. Lifting his head, the king gazed at the horse and for a while remained still like a painted picture. His eyes closed, and he passed into a state of trance that lasted for over 2 hours. But it was those days of politics where people had to simply remain quiet. The ministers and other officers did not dare to awaken the king, but waited with deep concern. And then the body of the king shook, even like a mountain summit that trembles from a mighty earthquake. The king regained consciousness like the blooming of a lotus. And with a gentle whisper, he asked, "What country is this? Whose court is this?" The minister spoke words steeped in humility to comfort the agitated king and asked, "O king, we are deeply worried about your condition. Your mind is endowed with excellent qualities, and it is impossible for such a healthy mind to be disturbed by the magical influence of an ordinary magician. Please tell us your experiences during your state of trance. Where were you? 2 hours, quiet. They are now asking what happened. That you don't even recognize that, you don't see that this is your own palace. You are in your own court. What happened to your mind?" That again seems like a big story, but that's a predicament of every individual. Figure that out. As people age, there comes a time when all your realities suddenly escape, because they are dependent on your nervous system. I will lead you to a negative picture, but no matter how much you avoid it, that's the reality of life. People coming to the close to departure from the world, but they don't recognize their own children nearby, people whom they loved so much. Look at them, who are you? And that's life. So what are we doing about it? We're securing everything, but we're not doing anything about that, which awaits everyone. And that type of insight must develop when you are growing with maturity. And it shouldn't be forgotten. It should be held within your heart that life you live is transient. And therefore, now come into scriptures and understand that this transience belongs to your lower self, your body, mind. It doesn't belong to you. You are the big iPhone. Allow to get that understanding enter your personality through integral yoga in daily life, with patience, sustained effort, with perseverance, with devotion. Then your life becomes life with purpose. And that's the message, that's the highlight message that the story is going to give to you. The king spoke, O ministers and royal officers, even the mind of a wise man can be overcome by dream at times. Listen to my experiences induced by this magician. This is section 106. King Ravana tells his experiences during the state of his trance. The king said, O officers of the court, you saw how this magician, desirous of showing me the magical power, waved his wand of peacock feathers. You also saw how I was presented with a white horse. As I saw the horse, it seemed to me that I mounted and rode him out of the court. Others didn't see it, but the king, as he passed out from the normal consciousness into a state of trance, that was his experience, that he rode the horse and he got out of the assembly. I experienced all this within myself. The swift-footed horse carried me very far away. No one followed me. I was led to a vast forest, rather vast desert-like land that was devoid of trees or water. This wasteland stretched before me like an unbounded ocean. With a sorrowful heart, I continued to ride the horse, and only with great difficulty managed to cross that vast desert. Then I found myself in a forest abounding with jamun and kadamba trees. You don't have to go into details. Beautiful trees with lush fruits. There were small fields of paddy cultivated by forest tribes. The horse would not stop, and in order to get off him, I clung to a tree branch and let the horse race on. The horse wouldn't stop. So what he did, the big branch was coming down, and he just, like a monkey, must have learned from it. Held on to the branch, and the horse went on. I was so exhausted that I withdrew myself into the hollow of a tree and passed a cold, sleepless night. Because of fear, that miserable night seemed like a very long period of time. All that experience, that's on his own throne. People are around him, waiting for an answer. And this is not something difficult to understand. You go into dream. In the dream, your time-space concept completely changes. You may be seated on a chair in your dream in a little dilapidated house with a big story. How you have been deserted by your near and dear ones. And how your forefathers have lived. The whole story may be there, right there. And all that has happened within 5 minutes. You are on the bed within 5 minutes. You have gone to sleep and you are settled with a totally different time space. Understand that quality, that nature of your mind. And the present world experience is exactly the same. It doesn't require big work of faith. All your experience is through your nervous system. Those experiences, they are as brittle as your nervous system. But that shouldn't give you a sense of despair and emptiness. It should give you that all these Maya that operates is on the basis of your real I am. And that I am is never affected, no matter what dream, no matter what karmic process. That unalterable I am should become your focus, while living with this transient I am, and a transient I am that holds on to still little I phone, I tablet. Eventually, the sun gradually rose from the east, as if it were drunk with red wine. The sun came with a reddish hue, but since king was so in a shock, without food and drink, all this appeared like a big wine. Called pathetic fallacy. You see in nature what is going on in your mind. If you feel miserable, then you describe a cloud. Cloud was moving in a miserable way. With big headache. I got up from my strange bed and looked around at the area around me. I was suffering from pangs of hunger. As the sun ascended in the sky and the glistening dewdrops began to dry up, I saw a maiden carrying a plate full of food on her head. This is a lady of a wild tribe, young lady who was carrying food of the wild tribe, meat of monkey and birds, carrying in a plate. But to him, she looked like Goddess Lakshmi, carrying a vessel of nectar. Coming down from the tree, I approached that forest-dwelling girl and said, "Oh lady, I have fallen into a miserable situation. Hunger burns in me like poisonous cobra. Please give me some food to satisfy my hunger." But the maiden wouldn't give me any food. When I continued to pursue her, even like a shadow at some distance, she said, "Oh handsome man, you are well adorned with golden ornaments. Know me to be a low-born Chandala, outcast, who feeds on the meat of horses and elephants. That was wrong. You may receive food from me only on the condition that you marry me. Double benefits. Because people who are born of a low class like me do not give any favor to anyone else without receiving something in return. This is the definition of karma. Everything that you attain in the world has a karmic process. And whatever you attain is not real, but is a result of your action. This food I am carrying for my father, who is working in the field nearby. See how he is plowing the field with the help of oxen. So nearby there is a field, farm, and her father is with an oxen plowing the field. And this girl was the daughter carrying the food, elephant and horse meat, not beef. Having listened to her demands, I consented to marry her during adversity. Who cares for the rules of caste or moral laws upheld by society? Called apat dharma. In difficult times, you don't forget about all the rules. You have to save your life. When I convinced the lady of my sincerity, she gave me half of the food, consisting of cooked rice and wine and jamun fruits. He must have convinced her to give only vegetarian type. I ate, drank, and rested for a while. Then that lady of black complexion led me to her father, who was the ghastliest person he had ever seen. And this lady whispered into father's ears. His ears were very big and ugly. That she had solved his big problem. Found a son-in-law for him. Overjoyed with the prospect of marrying me, she whispered some honeyed words to her father, then asked permission from her father to marry me. Her father then stopped plowing and, tying up the oxen, led us to his house. Father wanted to have more settled status. We three, the father, the king, and the girl, entered into a habitation of forest tribe. They're called bheels, where limbs of monkeys chicken and crows were all strewn around. That's what their luxurious world was. All swarming with flies. Atmosphere was a living hell. There I was led into a hut and made to sit on a plantain leaf, not those silken couch of the royalty, just the plantain leaf. My would-be cross-eyed mother-in-law stared at me and finally approved of me, being her son-in-law. Then just as one is forced to enjoy one's sinful karmas, so I was driven by my strange destiny to eat the disgusting dishes given to me. In the midst of sweet words, which were in fact the seeds of misery, I was married to the Chandala girl. The Chandalas, the outcasts, drank and danced. There was a great merriment there. And the marriage ceremony was concluded in the midst of great jubilation. Section 177 to 109. All this description we're giving is very condensed. Fortunately, I'm not reading the whole Yoga. It will take you 10 days just going through it. The king continued. After my marriage to the Chandala, I became a full-fledged Chandala. He forgot his identity. In the course of time, my wife gave birth to a female child. Even as adversity gives rise to evil actions. And the child rapidly grew up, just as worries grow in an unenlightened mind. In other words, this household life was not a joyous life. It's going hell after hell. 3 years later, she had a son. And as time passed, we had another girl and another boy. Just as an old turtle passes his time confined in a small lake, so I passed many years confined to the Chandala world. Although I grew old, my mind continued to be intent on maintaining my family and serving my children. So this is quite settled as a householder, settled in a house. Meat of hogs, monkeys, and other wild animals constituted my food. While the scars on my face grew because of the mounting disharmony with the Chandala neighbors. It was not a peaceful atmosphere. And the constant bitterness of my wife. Once I had a terrible fight with my family because of the disgusting meat of a goat. One wanted the nose side, another wanted the head. It's an allegorical parable of every soul in this world that is so transient. As I continued to perform my terrible duties day by day, I suffered from the extremes of cold and heat, buffeted by winds, burnt by the blazing sun, drenched in rains, chilled by the wintry weather. I advanced in age, and yet I continued to carry heavy burdens of wood on my head. Roasted by the fires of misery, my body turned black and became a true relative of the Chandalas. No longer endowed with royal dignity, no longer possessing the virtue of compassion, I became the very personification of a hellish cruelty. I passed away years like this, eating impure food, using gross and uncultured words, suffering from endless adversity, and living with the groups of Chandalas in the filthiest conditions possible. See, this is a trial. Because he has that good karmas. Instead of really going through all this came within 2 hours. As time passed, the Chandala habitation was plagued with a terrible famine. Not raining for a long time, green grass and luscious creepers were scorched by the fierce rays of the sun. Water was not to be found anywhere, and wild beasts roamed the forests, searching only for blood of their prey. Compelled by the circumstances, leaving me behind my aged and debilitated father-in-law and other relatives, I, along with my wife and children, attempted to move out of that famine-stricken area. After traveling for a while under the blazing sun, we took rest under a palm tree, while my Chandala wife slept with 2 of her children. My eldest son, Prichala, asked with tears in his eyes, "Father, please give me meat for food and blood for drink. I'm dying of hunger." He repeated this again and again, though I continued to say, "My son, there is neither meat nor blood." Seeing my son writhing in the pains of hunger, I said, "Oh son, will you eat the roasted meat of my body?" To this he immediately realized, "Yes." I will eat anything because I'm hungry. Desirous of putting an end to my hellish existence, I collected some pieces of wood from the forest, and setting them on fire, I threw myself into its hungry flames. At that very moment, I began to hear the royal drums of the court and became aware of being awakened by you people who are my royal officers. Sri Vasistha continued, "After the king had completed his story, the ministers, with eyes of anger, turned towards the magician, but he had disappeared. That was a divine magic, Maya. The king needed insight into the illusory nature of the world, so that his mind turns to moksha, liberation. And so that's what it says. His virtuous karmas led him to experience that. Seems like a pathetic, but it has a positive implication. O Rama, I was a royal priest of that great king. So Vasistha has been he is from life to life. Vasistha has no death. Vasistha plays again this allegorical story. For Vasistha, who is enlightened, he can identify himself with anything. And so in this story, he is not speaking any lie. The one who is enlightened is anything of this world. He is any personality. All reflected suns. The sun can, any reflected sun, if any reflected sun realizes I am the sun, then it can also say I am all the reflections. But anyway, coming back to the storyline, this is the same line in which Rama was born, and Vasistha is telling the story of great-great-great-grandfather's story. And Vasistha was there. He was the royal priest. All this happened before my very eyes. O Rama, the mind has veiled the nature of the self and has extended itself in the form of gigantic tree of the world process, with its numerous branches, leaves, flowers, and fruits. By taking recourse to wisdom, allow this mind to be rid of its vasanas, subtle desires, for the objects of the world. Then the purified mind will be enlightened by wisdom and will not hide the self. With the veil of illusion removed, you will discover your essential nature. Again, to give you just a simple way to understand, 3 great obstacles must be removed to be free of the world that is being experienced, which is mental projection. Those 3 are removal of mala, gross impurity, removal of vikshepa, subtle impurity in the form of subtle desires of the unconscious, and avarana, the veiling, the veil of ignorance. Mala, vikshepa, and avarana. These 3 are in Kundalini, your navel center, your heart center, and your Ajna chakra. And during this Navaratri, these 3 were removed by Durga Devi removing Mala, Lakshmi Devi removing Vikshepa, and Saraswati Devi removing ignorance. Aim, Reem, Kleem. This is Aim, this is Reem, that the navel is clean. Chamundayai Viche. Cha is navel, Mun is your heart, Da is your Ajna Chakra. And when these three, Mala, Vikshepa, Varna, are removed, there's nothing but Brahman, the Absolute. Until then, there is world where King Lavana went on wandering. But the story has not ended yet. There will be more interesting parts, and we'll continue next time. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.